talk about the concept which is central not only to Aristotle ethics, but also to the way we think about human relationships in general, friendship or philia. For Aristotle, friendship is not only a social bond, an emotional attachment. It is more a category, a virtue, and in its perfect form, even a mirror of our own souls. Why do we need friends? Can a truly good person live without them? And how far can friendship go in shaping the good life and even a divine one? So, Aristotle on family and love. According to Aristotle, excellence or virtue, arete, is not a property of individual actions in themselves. Instead, virtue is a disposition and axis of the agent. A person is not virtue simply because an action aligns with virtue, but because it is performed by a virtuous person with the right motives and in the right way. For Aristotle, this disposition is natural in the sense that every virtuous person fulfills his or her nature, although this nature is not innate, but cultivated through habituation. Virtue arises from the repeated performance of good actions, even before one becomes truly virtuous. Actions motivated by fear, madness, or lack of desire do not constitute genuine virtue. While pleasure often accompanies virtuous actions, Aristotle acknowledges that they may also entail discomfort or pain. Courage, for instance, often requires enduring suffering. In this respect, he diverges from the later Stoic idea, for instance, which conceives the sage as emotionally detached and indifferent to external circumstances. The virtuous life, although rational, is still deeply human and thus vulnerable to pain and joy alike. Intellectual virtues, such as wisdom, Sophia, belong to the realm of contemplation and do not require action. These virtues reflect the highest part of the human being and reveal why, for Aristotle, ethics is subordinate to politics, since the political framework is what enables education and the cultivation of virtue. From this perspective, eudaimonia, human flourishing, is the ultimate goal of life. This is the guiding theme of the Protopapas and the introductory books of the Nicomachean Ethics, where Aristotle insists that flourishing is an active, wakeful life of reason, not one of inactivity or pleasure-seeking. According to Diogenes Laertius, Aristotle claimed that the educated differ from the uneducated as much as the living from the dead. True flourishing, then, results from realizing our highest potential. For humans, this means living in accordance with the distinctive excellence of the rational soul. As Aristotle says in Nicomachean Ethics, this excellence lies in theoretical activity, theoria, the most divine and self-sufficient life. Yet, as he also recognizes, humans are not gods, but political animals, embodied in relationship and responsibilities. While the contemplative life represents the highest form of happiness, it is not fully attainable or sufficient for most people. Aristotle, therefore, also affirms a more practical form of eudaimonia, rooted in virtuous activity within the community. Aristotle is deeply interested in the ways human beings might attain eudaimonia and even a kind of immortality, particularly when their actions leave a lasting impact beyond the lifetime. One of the most tangible ways this is achieved is through children and grandchildren, who carry on one's genetic code and family lineage. Since the time of Homer, poets and historians had praised the immortalizing power of heroic deeds or even noble misfortunes, preserved in songs, stories, and public memory. Tombs, portraits, statues, paintings, inscribed gravestones, and mausoleums were commissioned by those who could afford them as means of preserving the public remembrance of themselves and their loved ones. In order to have children and secure remembrance through generations, human beings must first establish a household, oikos, which Aristotle presents as the fundamental building block of society in the opening of the politics. This formation of a household is not simply the result of deliberate planning, but arises from natural necessity, just as animals and plants are led by an instinct to reproduce and live among others of their kind. Aristotle explains that humans too are naturally inclined to live together, and their association into a household stems from the same inherent impulse. The household, therefore, emerges as the first form of community necessary for survival and reproduction. As he writes in Politics, one such natural necessity is the union of male and female for the continuation of species. Moreover, Aristotle insists on the fundamental dependency of human beings on organized social life. By nature, humans are self-sufficient. If someone were truly self-sufficient, he argues, that person would be either a beast or a god, having no need for the human necessities that arise from the social interdependence. It is for this reason that Aristotle defines humans as political animals, zoon politikon, and the household as the first and most basic social unit of political life. The household consists, as we know, of three core relationships. Husband and wife, father and children, master and slave. Each relationship reflects a different type of rule, and Aristotle examines each separately, showing how they contribute to moral and civic education. The material relationship is not only procreative, but also ethical. It is rooted in philia, a natural friendship that sustains solidarity and mutual care. Even though both partners are free, Aristotle believes that husband has the superior role in foresight and rational decision-making. The marital bond reflects a deeper moral connection that extends beyond mere reproduction. Aristotle's analysis of the parent-child relationship emphasizes not only the natural affection involved, but also its role in moral formation. The hierarchical yet temporary authority of the parent, especially the father, is grounded in the developmental needs of the child. Once maturity is reached, the asymmetry dissolves, giving way to reciprocal ethical engagement. Crucially, Aristotle sees this familiar philia as the primary space in which ethical development begins. Within the household, children are first introduced to the values of justice, duty, and affection, forming habits of character that will later shape their civic and moral lives. Thus, the affection between parent and child is more than an institution bond. It is an ethical relationship that anticipates the structure of political life. The familiar householder becomes, in this view, the training ground for virtue, and the philia it fosters provides the affective and moral framework for all other forms of human association. As with the conjugal bond, the parent-child relationship serves as a microcosm of broader social relationships and a vital component in the development of the just and flourishing city. Aristotle views the union between male and female as natural and universal. This relationship is necessary for both reproduction and the survival of the species. As he states in Politics, the first couple together person then, to which necessity gives rise, is that between those who are unable to exist without one another, for instance, the union of female and male. In the Nicomachean Ethics, I quote, the friendship between husband and a wife seems to be in accordance with nature. Nor a human being is by nature more of a coupling creature than a political one. Thus, the marital bond is not simply reproductive, but also ethical, as we have seen, grounded in the mutual affection and solidarity that can be termed as philia. This relationship fosters the emotional and moral well-being of the family unit. Aristotle emphasizes that the familial philia, especially between parents and children, is the first place where ethical training occurs. In Nicomachean Ethics, he notes that parents love their children more than children love their parents due to the generative and nurturing roles they play. This form of affection is enduring and unidirectional, but it is also deeply ethical, forming the basis of moral development. Aristotle notes that maternal love is particularly sacrificial, as mothers feel greater pain during childbirth and consequently develop a stronger bond with their children. To emphasize this idea, Aristotle refers to a specific example, Andromache, the mother of Antiphon's play, who sacrifices her child in order to protect and assure a better life for him. Specifically, she decides to allow others to adopt her son, Astyanax, in order to secure a better future for him, or even save him from death, as happens in Antiphon's tragedy. This example of Andromache highlights the sacrificial and selfless nature of maternal love, as mothers are willing to place their children's well-being above their own interests. This sacrificial and unconditional love is what differentiates maternal love from other forms of relationships and expresses its inherent moral and ethical nature. Hence, the ideal form of philia in the family mirrors the perfect friendship. Love given selflessly, without expectation of recognition, is all reward. In this way, the family unit not only nurtures the next generation, but also cultivates the virtues of selflessness and generosity, which are essential for the flourishing of both the individual and the polis. Conclusion. Finally, Aristotle sees the family as the microcosm of the polis. The affection and moral development fostered within the family set the stage for the ethical and civic life in the broader community. The family is not a separate, isolated unit, but a necessary foundation for the political structure of the city, which must be built in the moral and emotional bonds cultivated within the house. But what about the philia outside the house? Aristotle emphasizes that every living being seeks to live among its equals in order to feel safe and flourish. For human beings in particular, life within a community is essential, not only for survival, but also for security and happiness. Eudaimonia has always been tied to personal relationships, And philia, or friendship, or love, is something everyone requires in daily life. Whether in the desire of companionship, the need to share plans and reflections, or the pursuit of knowledge through dialogue, human beings are naturally oriented towards others. In the politics, Aristotle remarks, friendliness is an element of partnership, since men are not willing to be partners with their enemies, even on a journey. Enmity undermines the ethical base of cooperation, making genuine partnership impossible. Even children, as Aristotle would no doubt observe, in a modern setting, instinctively choose their friends in school or in the playground, and often select one as unique, a closer companion. This capacity for friendship, beginning in early life, reflects the deep-seated human inclination to form exclusive and meaningful bonds that provide both joy and moral grounding. Philia, for Aristotle, is both a moral disposition, and a product of political art, technopolitiké. It characterizes morally good individuals as it exists primarily among those who are virtuous and just. Aristotle asserts that if people are truly friends, they must also be just, since genuine friends neither harm one another nor commit acts of injustice. Thus, friendship emerges as one of the most essential goods of human life, intimately tied to justice, so much so that Aristotle suggests philia and justice are, in many respects, the same. In this sense, philia functions not only as a private moral bond, but also as a public ethical principle, foundational for political life and civic harmony. But already within the family, we encounter different forms of affection, which Aristotle treats as distinct types of friendship. Familial friendships differ depending on the relationship. There is one kind between brothers, another between father and son. Some are proportional, such as the paternal relationship, while others are based on numerical equality, like the friendship between siblings. Aristotle notes, friendship between relatives has more than one species, one as between brothers, another as between father and son. It may be proportional as a paternal friendship or based on number as in the friendship of brothers. This latter kind closely resembles that of comrades, for in both cases claims of seniority and privilege arise. Friendship for Aristotle is either a virtue or closely connected with virtue. For no one would choose to live without friends, even if they possessed all other good things, he writes. He also defined friendship as an equality of reciprocal goodwill. In fact, wealthy men, rulers, and those in power are thought to especially need friends, because what would be the point of their prosperity without someone to share it with? Beneficence finds its fullest and most praiseworthy expression in friendship, and prosperity itself cannot be preserved without the support of friends. To clarify the central role of friendship, Aristotle distinguishes between the three kinds of philia, each defined by the motive behind the bond: utility, pleasure, and virtue. These distinctions help to explain why some friendships are short-lived, while others endure and even shape the moral lives of those involved. Aristotle's theory of friendship, remarkably modern in a way, unparalleled in antiquity, distinguishes between different types of philia through the lens of human needs. Some friendships, perhaps a majority, are based on utility. While it is true that Greeks in Aristotle's era considered work to be vulgar, contemporary examples from our everyday lives offer a clearer understanding of friendships formed through utility. These relationships are often practical and situational. For instance, parents who take turns driving their children to school, assist one another with babysitting, or share daily responsibilities. In many professional contexts, such as in academia, it is not uncommon for one to extend a favor to a colleague whom one may not particularly like, because it is understood that the favor will be reciprocated in a similar situation. Even if mutual fondness is absent in the context of work duties, such exchanges are frequent. These relationships are reciprocal and beneficial, though temporary or impersonal, as they dissolve when professional circumstances change, such as when colleagues transfer to other departments, shift jobs, or retire. There is nothing inherently wrong with such friendships. They are part of life and can reflect mutual respect. But for Aristotle, utility-based friendships are the lowest form of philia because they are centered on external benefits rather than the character of the individuals involved. Neither party expects anything beyond what he has agreed upon. There may be a kind of mutual affection based on trust, but without any expectation of support in other circumstances. This kind of friendship often comes to a natural and painless end. Aristotle gives the example of travelers who part ways without any distress. Friendship based on pleasure. When we are very young, especially during adolescence, we tend to believe that friendship must be rooted in fun, going to parties, sharing a similar style, or experiencing the excitement of falling in love. Love at that age often feels spontaneous and effortless. In every age, you might enjoy going to the theater or playing a game with a friend. With young people in particular, the motive of friendship is pleasure, since their lives are guided by emotion and they tend to pursue whatever pleases them at the moment. But what they find pleasurable often changes with the age. As a result, these friendships are both quickly formed and easily dissolved because the emotional attachment shifts along with their changing interests. Although these early bonds may seem superficial, they are immensely important. They are our first steps in forming connection outside the household. Even when we are still protected within the family environment and surrounded by the security offered by parents and siblings, we begin to explore how philia works beyond the house. Such friendships are easily dissolved when the people involved no longer remain the same in character. These friendships, therefore, are short-lived, as Aristotle argues in the Nicomachean Ethics, every reality. Perfect friendship. Both types of friendship mentioned above, those based on mutual liking or goodwill, tend to emerge and dissolve in response to changing circumstances. This is surprising as it reflects the natural ebb and flow of human interaction. In such relationships, as in the case of colleagues, the individuals involved do not necessarily like each other in themselves. They are not friends with the other as himself, but rather as a participant in a shared, pleasurable, or useful activity. These forms of friendship therefore, differs significantly from what Aristotle describes as the perfect kind. As Aristotle argues, to wish to be friends is a quick growth, but friendship is not. Since the perfect form of friendship is that between the good and those who resemble each other in virtue. For these friends, we wish alike to others good in respect of their goodness, and they are good in themselves. But it is those who wish the good of their friends for their friends' sake, who are friends in the fullest sense, since they love each other for themselves and not accidentally for some accidental, for instance, temporary or no essential quality. Hence, the friendship of these lasts as long as they continue to be good, and virtue is a permanent quality. Such friends belong to the category of perfect friendship grounded in virtue. Their philia is enduring because it contains all the qualities essential to true friendship. A virtuous friend is, in a sense, a mirror of the other. It is because the good person holds these feelings towards himself and extends them to his friend, who is another self, that friendship is thought to consist in such mutual regard. Such friendships, of course, are very rare, spanias, because such men are few, but possessing these qualities is considered the true mark of a friend. That is why Aristotle says that, moreover, they require time and intimacy. As the saying goes, you cannot get to know a man till you have consumed the proverbial amount of salt in his company. Hence, the peck of salt has passed into a proverb, and so you cannot admit him to friendship or really be friends before each has shown to the other that he is worthy of friendship and has won his confidence. He compares steady friendship to the long time tasting of salt, since salt was the indispensable accompaniment to sociable meals. The mutual respect and intimacy among friends are shaped by Aristotle, according to Diogenes Laertius, as a single soul dwelling in two bodies. So far, so good. But what happens if, although our chosen, tasted, and unique friend happens to harm or even do something wrong against us? Aristotle says that those friends need a special treatment, since you can't have many primary friends, but only a very limited number. Even if it is natural to wish and to be loved by a great number of people, it is very hard to truly partake in joy and sorrow with many. Primary friends are practically irreplaceable, since it is difficult to feel genuine sorrow and joy for a great number of people, and even harder to expect that they do the same for us. Aristotle suggests that in the case of conflict, harm, or disappointment between such friends, one must proceed not immediately but thoughtfully, because the friendship is not based on utility or feeling pleasure, but on the virtue of the other as a person. One must carefully discern whether the wrongdoing was accidental, a lapse in character, or a sign of a deeper transformation. If the latter applies, that perhaps the person is no longer the same friend in virtue, no longer the other self. In that case, the friendship might dissolve naturally, not out of anger, but because its very essence has changed and or passed in a previous category of friendship. However, if the fault is minor or stems from ignorance, Aristotle advises tolerance and correction, in the hope that the friend will return to his former self. In such friendships, the bond is strong but not unbreakable. It is grounded in mutual moral excellence, which must be preserved to sustain the connection. Philia, according to Aristotle, is something natural and necessary. It arises not only among the good, where it reaches its perfect form, but also among ordinary people, since friendship takes on different kinds and aspects. It exists within the family, between life partners, parents and children, siblings, and more broadly in social relations. Perhaps the most beautiful thing one can encounter in life is a good friend, someone who is equal in many respects, so that both individuals, through such a bond, are united by what Aristotle calls the sweetest thing in life. This is why we ought to study together and celebrate together, not merely through the pleasures of food or bodily enjoyment, as such partnerships are more about shared indulgence than true friendship, but because each person genuinely wishes to share with his friend the end or telos he himself pursues. It becomes clear then that living together with our friend is not only desired but a kind of ethical duty, particularly for the best and happiest individuals. And this shared life is not just about everyday happiness, but about participating in the more divine pleasures, those that arise from the contemplation and realization of the good. It is always more delightful to see oneself enjoying the highest good, and in witnessing our friend's happiness, we see ourselves reflected. In this way, the friend becomes a mirror not of our image, but of our soul, in its striving toward virtue. The solution lies in the method of comparison. As Aristotle argues a few lines later, this sheds light in the necessity of friendship among human beings. If humans cannot live alone, deprived of their equals and of the shared experience of divine pleasures, it is because they are not like God, who can live in solitude. God's perfection allows for such self-sufficiency. He is too perfect to consider anything beyond himself. The reason is that, for us, happiness, eudaimonia, refers to something beyond the self, namely our perfect friend, whereas for God, it consists solely in his own flourishing. If then we have not chosen our friend merely for the sake of living together, but rather to share in philosophy, which is the true aim, then we arrive to the key insight. The source of eudaimonia in the virtuous person must be located not just within himself, but in this shared life in contemplation of moral excellence. Aristotle offers an answer by pointing to the role of the contemplative intellect theoria, urging us to consider its connection with the divine and, by extension, with immortality. We urge us not to listen to those who claim that because we are human, we should mind our thinking to human matters, or because we are mortal, we should only concern ourselves with what is related to our mortality. In the contrary, the intellect within us has the capacity to turn our gaze away from the earthly and reveal the divine aspect of our existence, of our divine potential. Thus, to the extent that it is possible, εφόσον ενδέχεται, we must strive to cultivate and bring to light the divine element within us and to imitate God as far as a human being can. This is a significant caveat that Aristotle stresses twice in the Nicomachean Ethics. The intellect is something divine, and second, and only insofar as it is possible. As he also states in the first book of the same work, man is a demon, flourishing or truly happy, but only as a man. This idea, in fact, has already appeared in his early work, Protopapas, where Aristotle notes that, in comparison with other animals, man resembles God. Yet, man, as has already been said, is neither perfect nor self-sufficient, like God. Perhaps then, in an effort to overcome his own limitations, the virtuous human being devised through perfect friendship and the practice of the philosophical discourse a way to express his divine dimension as much as it is humanly possible, just as Aristotle reminds us. Thank you.